So, Steven, you said you grew up a Sixers fan. So this next segment should be pretty interesting here to cover as the Sixers continue to form their new rotation around Maxey and Embiid. So next, we're going to cover Caleb Martin's new deal with the Philadelphia 76ers. So he's leaving the Miami Heat, and this whole situation has been covered at length. And it's kind of a sad story. I heard that he had been in talks with the Heat about a $65 million extension over, I think, a 4-year period. He turned it down, thought it was an insult. Now he ends up with a 4-year, $35 million deal to head to Philly with the possibility of hitting $40 million with some bonuses built in for each season. So I'm thinking that's in the realm of, 1 to 1.25 million per season. I think somewhere in there is probably what they're going to be. And I think that also the 4th year is going to be a player option. So if you would like to opt out after the 4th, hit free agency once again, he has that option. So it's going to start off at about 8.1 million for next season's salary, which is a slight uptick from the player option he declined with Miami. So I mean that's barely an increase for him. And then from there, it's going to go 8.5, 8.9, 9.4 million. That's what's been reported so far. So for Caleb Martin, he's probably going to be that 5th starter for them. You can start alongside Kelly Oubre, Paul George, Maxey Embiid. He's a proven playoff contributor, and we all know that's an area to where Philadelphia has struggled. I'm sure you of all people, Steven, know that Philadelphia in the past few years haven't had the best luck in the postseason. So getting a guy like Caleb Martin with a sensational Game 7 performance against the Celtics last year's playoffs, 2023 was incredible. He has that in his bag. He has that in his resume. Only averaged about 10 points per game last season, but he does have a great knack for attacking closeouts, getting in the paint, using his athleticism to finish at the rim, generate contact inside, throwing down some posters every once in a while, just really making some things happen at the rim with some creative finishes. Could definitely get hot. The shot isn't incredible, but he definitely has the ability to knock down 4 or 5 in a game if he gets some space. So he's got that in his resume. And then he's a pretty good defender as well. He's no Jonathan Isaac, but dunks and threes has him at about their 74th percentile in their defensive estimated plus minus, just bringing that back in again on that one number at plus 0.5 for that rating. So with this deal for the Sixers, I like it. It's just another maneuver to utilize that cap space before they give Maxey that max rookie extension. So I think it's another great move on their part. And they're doing things the right way, trying to build out this rotation. I still have some questions about the bench and how they're going to fill in minutes with the second unit, not having DeAnthony Melton there anymore, not having Paul Reed there anymore. They did get Andre Drummond, which I did like that deal for 2 years. But yeah, with this Caleb Martin signing, I think it's solid. Philadelphia is well aware of what Caleb can do. They played against him in the playoffs. So they have some history playing against Caleb Martin, and they see what he can do. We're going to have to see how this plays out for them in the postseason, but as a 6'6" wing that can guard other wings and other guards pretty well, I think it's a very fair deal. It actually might end up being a little bit of a bargain based on what he gives them over the course of the season. But let me go to you, Steven, and just get your thoughts on this. As someone that I'm sure follows Philly pretty closely, what do you think about Caleb Martin signing for this deal? Do you think it's a good deal for the Sixers, and how do you see him kind of fitting in with the rest of those guys in the starting lineup?
So I think it's a great deal for the Sixers. As you said, I think Miami offered up to $65 million to keep him, and Miami, needless to be said, very small organization. And the fact that they thought he was worth $65 million or willing to sign him to that shows, that I think I agree with you in terms of, yes, this deal's definitely going to end up being a bargain for the Sixers. In terms of the starting lineup, I think between everyone's like, oh, well, he can't play the 4 that I've seen in terms of Sixers fans. I don't think it really matters who's playing the 4, whether it's him, whether it's Paul George, whether it's Kelly Oubre. I think the fact that you have 3 above average defenders on the wing that are all switchable between Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey is a great problem to have. Mm-hmm. Now, I know that there's speculation that KJ Martin is going to get like a balloon 1-year payment using his very low cap hold in order to, basically give him like $15 million to salary match a deal later on for a guy, I don't know, like Dorian Finney-Smith, for example, because I know the Sixers have been in trade talks for him, and they could flip him at the deadline, get Dorian Finney-Smith, and, probably attach a pick to KJ Martin for doing that. But with that said, I know people talk about cap space being theoretical until you actually utilize it. I think not only for the Sixers, but even I know we just talked about Orlando. I think the cap space teams have done a phenomenal job of making that theoretical cap space into an asset. I mean, Look at what the Sixers did. They took a chance of not extending Tyrese Maxey's rookie extension when he's very well deserved it, even before this year.
Yep.
And basically said, look, we want the cap space. Good for Daryl Morey for trading James Harden for 3 expiring contracts and now won't take on any long-term money. And shout out to Rich Paul and Clutch. I mean, obviously that whole Ben Simmons contract was a disaster for the Sixers in terms of how everything went down. But Tyrese Maxey was willing to wait for the Sixers to utilize a cap space to sign his deal. And then he even took the deal with no player option. It was a 5-year straight deal. Didn't need a player. I mean, just overall, I would say a Daryl Morey masterclass for the Sixers. And I've definitely been critical of, I wouldn't say critical of Daryl specifically, but critical of the Sixers front office in the past. And I know, as I'm also a Sixers season ticket holder as well, so I go to a lot of games.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to lose my mind when I see Nick Nurse pull out like a triangle and 2 against Boston or something defensively with probably Paul George and Caleb Martin on Tatum and Brown. Like, it's something that the Sixers haven't had in terms of like 3-and-D wings and having an abundance of them. Like, we've never even had one. Thinking back, the best 3-and-D wing the Sixers have had in the last few years, aside from, well, Jimmy Butler's not even really a 3-and-D, but I'm just saying, like, in terms of wings, is like James Ennis. Like, Sixers just never really prioritized the wings. So I think the fact that now they have 3 guys who can play the 2, 3, and 4 in the starting lineup, with the flexibility maybe added Dorian Finney-Smith or someone of that ilk at the deadline, I think it shows the importance of what you could do with that theoretical cap space that, we just talked about.
Right. You were talking about 3-and-D players, and, Jimmy Butler fills a 2-way role for sure. Maybe not necessarily 3-and-D. Yep. I definitely would say that Tobias Harris does not fill that role. He's got the 3, doesn't have the D. So I'm pretty sure that you were not all that disappointed to see him leave and sign a deal with the Pistons. I'm sure that was a sigh of relief for you after seeing what he did in the playoffs there against New York. That was very rough to watch. So replacing him with Paul George and Kelly Oubre and now Caleb Martin, huge upgrade. I think they get a ton of value here. Paul George's deal has some risk there for sure, giving him 4 years. But it's a chance you have to take. You're trying to maximize Embiid's prime. And, if you want to do that, you have to have a shrewd operator like Daryl Morey. And he looked at Tyrese Maxey's hold in their cap sheet and saw $13 million for next year. And it's like, okay, well, let's fill in the blanks here in the rotation, then re-sign him. And then that jumps from 13 to over 30 million for the max rookie extension. So great use of that space, just to kind of echo your point there. And I mean, they're set up really well here going forward. I know they also, I think, worked out that, I think it was a sign-in trade for Buddy Hield. So working that into just all kinds of deals here, just kind of maneuvering, making small deals, bringing in Drummond for 2 seasons. I think a very, very solid deal just to get some size and rebounding in there. I think that's the one area to where I don't think it's a huge concern, maybe a slight concern. It's just their overall size. If you're going against a bigger forward, I think there could be, a little bit of trouble there, just kind of containing a player like that defensively. But still, like you said, there's versatility there, and there are players that can switch 2 through 4. So that's a lot of value there in today's NBA, because most teams switch a lot of these sets, whether it's the pick and roll, whether it's some kind of a off-ball action. They're switching there as well. So having players that can stay attached and are pretty long and pretty athletic, it's going to be very valuable moving forward. So I think just as long as they can fill in a couple of pieces here and there on the bench, they're going to be in great shape. So I think after it's all said and done, I can't remember for sure, but I think they're going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe just below that first apron. I think is where they're kind of trying to stay around. So if they can do that and not be completely hamstrung by any of the aprons, huge win for Philadelphia. They're still going to have a little bit of flexibility there, even after making all these multiple transactions this summer.
Yeah. That's the one thing I will note is the importance of the low cap hold of KJ Martin. I know I just briefly discussed it, but so many teams are now hard capped out like either the first apron or second apron. Because like now with this new CBA, if you take in more money than you send out, you're hard capped at the first apron automatically. Yep. So many teams are hard capped at the first apron. If the Sixers could avoid that by giving that balloon payment to KJ Martin, which if you were to sign and trade KJ Martin now, there's the base year compensation issue where only 50% of his salary would count for salary matching. But if you sign him to, let's say, $15 million 1-year deal now, you could just, hold him and flip him at the deadline for a guy who makes less than that, essentially. Any guy who makes a mid-level exception money, anybody makes less than that. So that's where I think like a lot of Sixers fans are like, oh, now let's get DFS as well. It's realistically not going to happen because the Sixers aren't going to hamstring themselves at the first apron. And they shouldn't because so many other teams are hard capped at it that why would the Sixers, if it's not necessary, they got their fifth starter meanwhile. That's why I think you're better off waiting for a subsequent move than, doing like a KJ Martin sign and trade right now with his $2 million cap hold.
Right. No, I totally agree with that, man. So overall, yeah, I think Sixers doing a great job. And we'll see if it makes a difference in the postseason because that's why they're doing all of this. Is not to be another great regular season team. They need to make some noise in the postseason. That's the next step for them.